we can, now it's being recorded, so we can actually put it on our YouTube channel for our Cybersecurity chapter. Kip, Michael, let's jump right into it. I was actually looking at this article on CB News where there was a mention of this big fire, that the big resignation going on, and at the same time, there's a 500,000 job openings in US in cybersecurity. I think every school, every university, every training platform that I go to, they have some sort of component of cybersecurity or security in general that they're training. So education is there. Where do you feel that there's a skill gap going on that we can't, as a manager, we can't hire enough people to fill those positions?
Michael, you want to take it first?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I think a lot of the issue, in fact, it's interesting that the number is now 500,000 because every time you look, the number keeps going up. I think 90 days ago, the quote was 350,000 open security positions in the United States. So if you go online and you look at a lot of the job descriptions in terms of, especially if you look at major security companies or security focused companies like a CrowdStrike, or maybe you look at a large global company like I used to work for IBM, and you see a lot of these positions they're looking for a lot of people with a lot of experience. And unfortunately, what's happening is there's not a lot of people out there in the market that actually fits to a T what these job openings are. And so unfortunately, hiring managers are passing and they're waiting for the right person to come along. And unfortunately, what's really the reality in my mind is you have to kind of cut some corners or figure out, okay, well, this is really what I need. All this other stuff would be great. So let me just reduce what my needs are so I have a broader pool of people, and then I can start filling those positions. Kip?
Yeah, Michael, I think you're correct. And the reason why I think you're correct is because one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm actually helping to bridge the gap between people who want to work in cybersecurity and the people who are trying to hire folks into cybersecurity. And so I'm actively coaching every month about 15 people into improving their resumes, getting their interview skills where they need to be, teach them how to negotiate an offer and so forth. And some of the stories that they bring back to me, and some of the things that they show me in terms of like what the job postings look like and how that compares to the actual experience of trying to apply for the job. And I concluded that hiring managers are shooting themselves in the foot left and right. They don't necessarily realize that they're doing this, but I can see it. And so one of the things that I decided to do to help was to start an open source project, and it's called the Cybersecurity Hiring Manager's Handbook. And so that's why I'm agreeing with you, is because I'm big in this space right now, and I can see kind of both sides of this equation. As for the people who are trying to get jobs, sometimes I really sort of hold my head in my hands and just go, oh my gosh, there's the gap between the people who want to work in cyber and the people looking. Even if hiring managers did everything right, there's still going to be a pretty big gap, because people are being told things that are not helpful to them, right? Like universities are telling people, get a master's degree in cyber and you'll get a job. Well, I'm sorry, that's generally not true. That's just one example. So yeah, there's absolutely a gap. One other thing that I'll say about the gap before I pass it back to Victor is some of these job descriptions make me wonder if the job is real. When you look at the requirements and you set them against the offered compensation, it just doesn't line up. And so I suspect some of those job postings are insincere.
Yeah, in fact, let me add 2 more points to that, because that is true. In a lot of cases, especially in the larger businesses, people are required to post an external job post just so they can hire an internal candidate. So they really have no intention of hiring someone externally. So, when you're out there looking at a job post and you think even if you hit 100% of qualifications, you're not going to get it. The second piece of this, which I've heard from a number of managers, and these are really small, mid-sized companies, is especially in the senior security skill applicant, they're asking unrealistic demands. Like, I want a jet ski with as a signing bonus. I mean, I'm sure companies are doing that, but that's kind of crazy.
It's a crazy market.
And I
On
think
both
that's
sides.
where the gap is increasing, right? I mean, every organization, or most of the organizations, I should say, that they're looking for those senior resources who are asking for jet ski, and there's the whole lot of supply of junior resources that nobody's actually considering. So before we move on, I think I want to stay on this topic for a minute here. And Kip, you and I talked about this, where as a manager, when our HR or external recruiter, when they ask for, hey, what technologies do you use? And as a security leader or a practitioner or from a company policy, I can't put exactly what technologies I use, and yet I'm supposed to hire someone who knows and get the ground running. So hit the ground running. So where do you see that how to overcome that part?
Right. So there's a couple of paths here that I think could be reasonable. Well, first of all, I think that if you have to hide everything about your infrastructure and your systems because you believe that if somebody had a blueprint of everything, that's actually a warning sign that that you're not where you need to be. Now, if you're doing things pretty well, then I would think that, based on the fact that security designs by principle should not depend on their obscurity in order to be effective, in order to be strong, then, that I think is the tension, right? So if people feel that their systems are not put together well enough that if they disclose the designs, they'd still withstand attack, then I could see why somebody wouldn't want to publish. But you know what? I have not found any evidence, and if anybody on the call today would be able to give me some evidence, I would love to get it. But I've never seen any evidence that that I could draw a line to that said that if I put this information into a job posting, that I'm going to get attacked. And I don't know that anybody could prove it, but I will tell you that if your infrastructure is strong enough, then I would go ahead and put that information in there. Now, on the other side of it, what you could also do, I think, is another perfectly reasonable path, although this takes longer, right? Is that you could generalize a great deal in the job description and then ask applicants to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And I think that would give you some protection over just, putting everything out there. But I mean, if you're a Microsoft shop, I mean, really, does it really take that much for me to figure that out just by, sending an email with a known bad email address on it, having it bounce back to me, and then reading the headers? You know what I mean? It's like, I think anybody who wants to know that information is going to be able to find it out just by doing open source intelligence gathering anyway.
Yep. Michael, I think we talked about it. Hiring is not happening anymore on resume level. It's happening on LinkedIn level. So when these days, it's not about like, let me send you my resume up to date with the cover letter, and then you'll go ahead and review it. It's happening on pretty much on a LinkedIn level, but still, when as a hiring manager, we're looking at that LinkedIn profile or we're looking at that resume, what do you see? What do you see that's enrusted, that jumps out of that resume or LinkedIn profile that, okay, yeah, that's it. That's the talent, or that's the skill. That's the person I want in my team to work with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, when I get resumes today, and in fact, even when I send my resume out to people, I mean, it pretty much emulates whatever's on LinkedIn. I mean, some LinkedIn may be a little bit more unabridged since I can write limitlessly. But the reality is, I'm not necessarily focused on what you did 10 years ago, although it could be interesting enough, or even 5 years ago. I'm really looking at a couple of things. I'm looking at consistency in the resume, career progression. I'm not too excited about an individual that is showing every 12 to 18 months they're going to a new job, which tells me right away, okay, well, then they're only going to probably be with me for 12 to 18 months, in which case then, do they have a specific skill or a specific element of advantage that I really want to add to my team, recognizing, okay, they're going to be here for 12 to 18 months. And if they can fit in and get me to the next level, that's great. So, and then of course, there's the adaptability, can they learn things? I mean, it goes back to the point of, does this individual, do they have to know this particular type of software that I use? I mean, think about, many of us are technical managers or have a technical background with us. And I think we all kind of pride ourselves on the fact that, yeah, we can jump in and pick up a new piece of software probably within 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 60 days. But, within a relatively short period of time, we all could go in and pick up this new stuff. So there's no reason not to expect that if we can hire a good quality technician, as well as someone that has good communication skills, can demonstrate a certain level of teamwork and delivers on their commitments and can essentially demonstrate that, they wouldn't be a great hire.
Yeah. And here's a good point for debate, I guess, where skill versus attitude, right? We always talk about it. Are you going to pick a right attitude or are you going to pick the right skill? And it all depends on based on the job. I guess that's usually the answer, that if I want my surgeon to know how to do brain surgery, maybe I don't care if they have the bedside manners or not, but as long as they do the job, yes, I'm going to pick the skill. But at the same time, I think in our industry, we can also weigh on towards the attitude, like what are they bringing on the table? Are they team player? Are they solo player? You can always go to any team member and you can ask, like, who do you want to work with in this team? And they all point to the same person. And who do you not want to work with? They all point to the same person, or maybe two, I guess. With that, Kip, what are the pain points hiring managers feel when they're hiring people? Like, how do they actually judge? And given the COVID, I mean, everything is pretty much remote and online. How do I even evaluate based on just looking at the video on the screen?
Yeah, it certainly is difficult. Now, some of us, and guilty here, I don't have as much of a challenge navigating the Zoom, landscape. I think some other people are really struggling with this, right? I don't happen to really struggle that hard with it, but I certainly know other people do. One of the things that I like to focus on, and I actually teach this to the folks who come in and ask me for help, is you really have to look at that job description carefully, and then you need to tailor your resume for that. So one of the things that I like to see with a candidate who's responding to an open job that I have is I want to see that they've really honed their resume down to what is important for the job that I've posted. When I get generic resumes, I really struggle with that, because what the candidate is telling me is, hey, it's all in there somewhere, you figure it out, right? And it's like, no, I want to hire somebody who's going to make my life easier, right? I want to hire somebody who's interested in taking burden off of me, because my boss has put more burden on there than I can possibly handle on my own. That's why I get a team, right? And so right away, I can tell whether somebody's really interested in contributing and, or not, based on, how much thought and care has gone into their resume. But it can be really difficult. We did a survey about this time last year, and it wasn't a scientific survey, a statistically valid survey, but we just kind of, on Twitter and a couple of other places, and people we know, we just said, hey, what's your number one pain point as a hiring manager? What are you struggling with the most? And so like the top pain point was exactly this. It was, how do I screen resumes and candidates? And then when I unpacked it a little bit, what I found out was they're very frustrated because they said there's a lot of paper tigers out there. Right. So these are people who have written amazing resumes, but then you bring them in and you ask them very basic questions and they cannot answer those questions. So it's fabulously frustrating for them. And another thing that they talked about is that their HR departments have no idea what it is that they want, right? Who don't know how to help them actually screen candidates. And so that was a big deal too. Anyway, and so I think another thing that people are doing that's hurting themselves is they're trying to find like this one purple unicorn, rock star InfoSec person who can do everything. And I think that's not a good idea. I realize there's a lot of pressure, right? And you want to go and you want somebody who can do everything. I think that's a mistake. And I think, by doing that, you kind of set your bar too high. And then even, otherwise good candidates are going to pale, in comparison to this incredible bar that you've set because you want this person who can do it all. So anyway, some of my thoughts in response to your question.
Yeah, and to your point, right? Hiring managers or maybe the companies, they're looking for those unicorns, but I think no, they shouldn't actually. We got to talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion. And Michael, you and I were discussing about that, where there are people who are really go and they're determined, and or they're a good executive. They're gonna follow the instruction list to the letter. How important is it for as a hiring manager for you to understand the different skills, different talent, and to pretty much diversify your team? And what could be the benefits of it? I mean, why do I care for having different diversity in my team? What benefit it's going to bring me? Because at the same time, why don't I hire someone who's just going to follow all the instructions that I want and get the job done?
Well, for the most part, you really don't want a drone. You don't want someone that's just going to do exactly what you tell them to do, because effectively what that means is you're going to be really managing that person really heavily. So you want to have someone who's a thinker. But looking at the bigger picture, it's very important to understand really the composite of your team. You'll have people on your team that are leaders, that are really are awesome and are really like that top echelon. Of course, using Kip's example, where you hire the person that's got the really the top super unicorn talent, oftentimes you have the unicorn ego that goes with the unicorn talent. So you have to be careful that this, when you bring in this ego, is it going to disrupt the team? Is it going to be, you're going to now build almost like a cult-like environment where you're going to have people that follow this person and people that are on the other side of the fence that just like, I can't even talk to this person. Because, if they don't think about it, if it's not coming from them, it's not something that's interesting. So anyway, it's important to understand the dynamics of your team, the leaders, the followers, who's strong in which areas. And then on the diversity point, I'm a big proponent of diversity, not necessarily because I'm going to make my HR people happy in terms of how they're counting the numbers, but the reality is you bring in different perspectives. You bring in different perspectives from a cultural point of view, from an education point of view, a lifestyle demographic point of view, and that only makes your team stronger, because then they can kind of pick and feed on each other, and really they fill holes. And what's also very important, and this is what I think a lot of people miss, is as your team, you're not just servicing folks in the team, you're dealing with other organizations, either in your company, or maybe you're dealing with customers. You're dealing with end customers or end clients. And by having this diverse team, look, people buy from people who they relate to, who are like them. And anytime you can have a diverse team, that gives you that flexibility to help pick and choose really how you want to mix that team to work with the client. And because you have very diverse client set, the more diverse team you have, that just makes the client that much more accepting to what you're doing in your business.
Yeah, and that's exactly, I think most of the hiring managers, or in general management leadership style, we always try to pick and choose. And we used to have this actually workshop, different colors, like people based on different their priorities or different innovations or what they want to do. You kind of put them together so that as a manager, I don't have to actually think everything. I just have to be there for them to support and amplify what they're doing, so that they are the one innovating. They are the one coming up with the new ideas. They're the one actually brainstorming it. It's not me who's brainstorming alone and giving them what to do. It's actually them as a diverse group. There's going to be conflicts. That's part of the management. That's always going to be something that you have to manage. There's no way out of it. You can't have very peachy team where everybody is getting along and they have no problems. But that's what our job is at the end of the day. So as we're wrapping up this session of hiring, Kip, I want to talk about your open source project that you founded, Cybersecurity Hiring Manager book. Let's talk about that and give us a little bit of introduction to the project and how community can involve in it.
Oh yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. So first of all, it's hosted on GitHub. All right, so it's freely available. We released it under a very liberal Creative Commons license, and so we want people to get in there and check it out. And ideally, when you read it, if you think something needs to be improved, go ahead and issue a pull request for it so we can actually make the thing better. So we raised a team of about 50 hiring managers. And over last summer, we actually created a detailed outline of the handbook. And then we went ahead and started turning that outline into prose. Now it's not finished yet, but we have a lot of great content. We've got some parts of it still need to have outline turned into prose, as I said. But it was written by many experienced cybersecurity hiring managers. So I think there's a lot of virtue in it. And it takes a life cycle approach to finding talented people and keeping them on your team as long as possible. But it also recognizes that sooner or later, somebody is going to graduate from your team, right? I mean, that's how I think of it. When somebody leaves my team, and I just had this happen just about a month ago, a really valuable team member of mine came to me and said, I have this fantastic offer. I can't turn it down. I really want to go and take it. And I said, I really am going to feel a lot of pain, right? Because you're leaving and it's going to leave a hole, but go with my blessing. And, I'm going to consider you a graduate of our little, learning laboratory here. And I hope you crush it. Right. So, and now I'm in the middle right now, even of posting the job, searching for, a new talented person. And so, but the hiring manager handbook, tackles the entire life cycle here. Another thing that I want to say about the handbook that I think would be helpful is when we started creating the outline, I kind of challenged everybody working on it. I said, when we do information security work, we have these principles of design. And I said, do you think there's principles of hiring and principles of, maintaining a team and so forth? And they very quickly came back to me and they said, it's not that easy, Kip, but we think we could put some ideals together. In other words, we can never be ideal in everything that we do. But if we could, focus on one or two hiring ideals and if we could get those incorporated into the work that we do, then, that would be a way for us to encourage people to be better in a realistic way. And so I'm happy to say that we have all the a collection of ideals in there. They're right up front. And then we've got it woven throughout the entire handbook. So every major section of the handbook tries to suggest in practical ways how you can actually live to those ideals. So I think it's a very thoughtful body of work, and I would encourage you to check it out at the very least. And if you want to contribute, I think that'd be fantastic. You could contribute just by going to GitHub, or if you actually want to get a little bit closer to the action, if you want to actually meet some of the people who helped to write it, that would be wonderful too. So I'm just going to, in the chat now, I'm going to put in a short link that will take you right to the handbook. It's not only in GitHub, we've actually published it on another website as well. So if you like to read markdown files, go to GitHub. If you want to read it in a format that looks a little bit nicer, then I would say go to this link that I just put into the chat. And then finally, if you want to join the team, I'm going to put another short link in there. And if you go to that, put your email address in there, and I don't spam people, right? But I can get you into the open source community that we've pulled together, and we'd love to have you.
I was gonna say stay until the end, and we'll give you a free digital copy. But Kip already posted the link, so there you go.
Oops.
Trying to be generous. That's all.
Hey.
Not trying to send you away. You're all professionals. I'm sure you can,
Well,
restrain
Victor's going to
yourselves.
charge us for the handbook. So
Just the 30 minutes, I'm going to charge you, Jennifer. Anyways, so we talked about the hiring process as a manager. We talked about how do we hire, what do we look at, and resumes, how do we actually look at the skills. Let's talk about now that we are in the trenches, we're actually working. Michael, what happens to a person, or how do you as a manager deal with a person who is either disruption to the team or clearly not fit to be in the team? They're not doing the job, they're not meeting the KPIs. How do you deal with that as a manager?
That is hard. In fact, that is probably one of the hardest things to deal with as a manager. In fact, I talk to a lot of small business owners in technology as well as not out of technology. And you see the sweat just kind of beating on there when they realize they have to really start working to figure out what to do with this employee. First of all, the employee that's not delivering to their key performance indicators or to their business commitments, that's a drag on you as a manager. That's one, because that reflects badly on you and your team. The second thing, and this is probably equally important, is the team members, they see this. They know when an individual in the team is not pulling their weight or isn't performing to whatever the expectation. Now, I'm not talking someone who's just hired, who's been hired in and they're 90 days into the job. I'm talking about someone that really everyone expects them to be performing at a certain level. So as a manager, what I recommend and what I advise is you have to go into performance management mode. You have to have a very stern conversation with the employee to make sure they understand the expectations of the job and what they're supposed to be delivering. And depending on where that you are in the process or where that employee is on the process, if it's really getting close to the end and you have an HR person you can work with, in fact, I would engage your HR person immediately to make sure that they're in sync, because they're going to be now partner with you on this journey, whether you're going to hopefully turn this employee around or you may have to terminate them. And if you're going to have to terminate them, you have to do it under a specific process to make sure you are not going to get a legal lawsuit at the end, or you're not going to get a equal employment opportunity commission lawsuit if they're a diverse class. I mean, there's all sorts of issues you need to be aware of from a legal point of view that have nothing to do with cybersecurity. But because you're a manager, you know, you're get versed on the law. But anyway, if it gets really bad, then what you do is you want to implement a 90-day performance plan, very specific items that person has to deliver. And you have to have a regular weekly status meeting, regular updates, quarterly reviews. And then if it's after 60 days and it's clear that that employee isn't going to make the cut, then it's working with your HR department on how to exit the employee from the business. And you will be surprised if you have an employee that's really that bad, how when you exit that employee from the business, it's almost like the rest of the employees have a party. They're so happy and you get so much credibility with the other employees because you did the hard work and exited that person from the business, which instantly improves the morale of the whole organization.
And I would go this far as well, that sometimes as a manager, we want to be generous. We also want to have to make sure that we are nourishing our employees and we are giving them the space that they need to be innovative, thinking outside the box. Sometimes that's happening. But at the same time, there's a fine line between that as well to meeting your deadlines, meeting your strategic goal as a manager. Funny enough, one quick incident where a manager actually reported to HR that, hey, this person has not been performing from past 12 months. I would like to talk about their exit and termination. HR said, yeah, this person has actually reported 6 months before that you as a manager is not giving clear goals. So we need to talk about your exit or termination. So again, as a manager, you want to bring up those conversations early enough. This is your job as managing your team, managing expectations, and also aligning with business and HR, because that's at the end of the day your responsibility. Yep. Kip, let's talk about some of the things that in a job where we see this a lot. We talked about this extensively. So I'll summarize this and ask you a question where we see over and over again in organizations where someone is really good at their job. That could be accounting, cybersecurity, technical, whatever that is. And they've been in the industry or organization for a while and their boss left and they're like, and the company was like, you know what, who's the next seniority? And they pick that person and make them the manager. That manager is not people manager. That manager have no training, no education, no experience to be the people manager. They are really good at being individual contributor or even team player, but technical. They're into the weeds every day. They're into the trenches. They're doing the micromanagement because they feel that they want to stay close to the team. What do you say about that to the managers, that they are actually picking up those technical managers and what route they should go to?
Well, oh boy. First of all, I'm just cringing, right? Because the scenario you're describing happens very commonly. And I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who took the promotion, because you don't have to take the promotion, right? I mean, just be clear. If somebody offers you the promotion into people management, you don't have to take it. But a lot of people do. A lot of people, yeah, yes, right. So like it's, on the positive side, it's career growth. On the positive side, it's compensation growth. you have more more formal authority, right? I understand that it's very tempting, but at the same time, I've also talked to a lot of people who gave into the temptation and did it and regretted it big time, and they felt like they were stuck and they became miserable and they didn't know what to do but for themselves. And in the meantime, their whole team is suffering because they're not being led, right? And so I just think if you're watching this session, and if I've just described you really need to make a change, right? You either need to just embrace people management and and just surrender to it and start getting better at it, or you need to find some way to change things. Maybe you keep your position, but maybe you bring somebody beside you who is really great at people management, and and then maybe you can work with them. Because I'll tell you what, I'm not the greatest people manager ever. I know I'm not. I think I'm pretty good, but I also know where I'm weak. And I try to build teams to compensate for my weaknesses, right? So like, I'm not Mr. Fun, right? So I don't always think of the fun things to do. And so I always try to bring somebody out of my team who is all about having fun. And I try to get them, to give them the power to help make fun happen for the team, with my support. So, and so I think that's a completely reasonable change that you can make if you find that you've accepted a promotion and that you've come to regret it, or you're just struggling. Like, no, I want to do this, but I'm just struggling. You probably need to get some help, right? And it could be somebody who's on your team, could be a peer, right? Look around in the org chart for somebody who you think does do a wonderful job as a people manager. And if you can, go to that person and say, hey, I'm trying to get better at this. Would you mentor me on this, right? You could do that. Or if that doesn't make sense because of the organization you're in, maybe there's a lot of politics and you don't want to, be that vulnerable on the job, that's fine, right? Go someplace else and get that kind of mentoring. Because here's the thing, your people are probably suffering, right? Because they're not getting what they need. And that can lead to an awful situation where people are going to start leaving. Think about it. Anybody who wants a job could pretty much go get one if you've already been working in information security for a while, right? I'm not saying you're going to get one at the drop of a hat, but you probably, with a little effort, you can change employers. And I think an awful situation to be in is when you're a person who is a reluctant people manager, people start leaving, now you've got to start hiring. And now you've got to immerse yourself in something that you're not very good at, like in a big, big way. And it can lead to like a death spiral. I wouldn't want that for you or anybody else. So anyway, that's how I think of it. That's, in response to your question.
I think the comment, Kip, on the find the person that's fun, that's where understanding your team and being able to diversify your team is so important.
It is.
Because you really do. You need someone to be the social, who's the cruise director here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so. If you're not the cruise director, right, you need one.
I like delegating that.
Someone has to do it. Yeah, I think one thing I would say, and this is very, again, it takes a lot of courage and to accept it, that as a manager, you are human. You are allowed to make mistakes, and you are allowed to acknowledge those mistakes in front of your team as well. Just because you're a manager, you're not perfection in every single scenario. That's never going to work out if you think it that way. And right. I think being humble and knowing that what your strengths, and to your point, Kip and Michael, what are your weaknesses as well? Be upfront with your team. It's not you're walking around and being all vulnerable and be like, I'm vulnerable, I can't do things. No, it's literally being transparent with your team that I'm really good at doing these things. I'm really good at making sales or running numbers or getting you the funds you need or just doing things for you guys. But I'm terrible at doing maybe staying away from technical because my background is technical. I'm curious in general. So when I'm attending your calls, just help me rail that hey, since you're here, the conversation is biased. Just let us be, even though your background, and this happens more than often in our industry in cybersecurity because technical folks are becoming managers.
Yes.
And their background is they're curious. They're engineers at the background. So now, but then now they're managers. When they come to the conversation, when they something, the conversation is biased. So it's okay for your team member to tell you that I don't want you in my meeting. That's okay to accept. That's okay to hear. Please hear that, accept it, move on. You're a manager. You can't be in the trenches anymore. Just accept and move on, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think it takes, a lot of the things we've been talking about during the session up to this point require, I think, a high degree of emotional maturity as an individual, right? Whether that's constructing the kind of team that we talked about, which is composed of a lot of very different types of people, people who come from a lot of different backgrounds, maybe have different value systems. Well, that, you're going to get a lot of clash, right? And if you're not emotionally mature enough, then those clashes can become toxic, and then your team spirals out of control. But if you can, have the emotional maturity to guide people through that clash, and then it can be constructive tension, which is great. And again, the emotional maturity to be able to see yourself and to know where you're strong, where you're not strong, and then have the strength, actually, not in weakness, but in strength. Invite somebody to walk beside you in an area that you're weak in, I think is, again, an emotional maturity issue.
Along those lines, I think also it's important to realize, and when an effort is made, even though as a fact, because in the past you have seen it as experience, it's a bad, recognize that effort first. Say that thank you for doing it. You have done a wonderful job. You have made an effort. You have worked on it. Don't pass on before recognizing it and be like, yeah, you've done it, but you could have done it this way because I am telling you as a manager. Good to know. But as a manager, you really have to understand that your team is everything at the end of the day. You shine because of your team. You fail because of your team as well. You alone cannot do anything. So really take care of your team at the end, I think.
I think there's another interesting point is career aspiration. I mean, we all have our own career aspirations. We have our own career steps, either the steps we took to get to where we are today or where we want to go in the future. And our employees on our teams, they have those same aspirations. Now, some of them may feel, I want to be a technical person the rest of my life and stay in this job that I'm doing right now for the next 10 years. And that is cool. If that's what they want to do and they do a great job, that's fine. However, there's a little expectation that the bar gets raised every year and they're going to have to do more and learn the new stuff. So it's not totally they're going to stay in that spot. But it's very important as a manager to understand what each employee's desires are. And so when you are making decisions, or maybe your manager is making a decision about something, or you're leaving the company, you at least can set the team up into a good place for that next person to say, okay, here's some people that would be good candidates for my job, or here's people, this person wants to go to this position, or this person we can expect to leave the company in 6 months. But anytime you can kind of navigate where the pieces on the chessboard are today and where they're going to go tomorrow, that just creates such a better position for not just you, but the team as a whole.
I think as a manager, it's really important to realize sometimes that it's not about that I want to keep my team as it is, same position, and I'm going to continue shining the way I am. It's really to actually talking to them, hey, what are your plans? What are you going to do next year? And so if someone actually tells me that I have no plans, I'm going to actually help them get a plan. If you don't know what you're going to evolve into, let's talk about maybe certification. Let's talk about different areas. Let's give you some other challenges that you can evolve into. As a manager, that's the best gift, or that's the best you could do for your team to help them evolve. If your tendency and mindset is that this is my team, if I hear a resignation, that is it. You're dead for me. I think that doesn't work for a good manager, I think.
And that's why having a career conversation, I know we're getting a little off topic here, but having a career conversation with your employees, at least annually, sometimes every 6 months, but and if someone's really looking to leave, you want to have it a little more frequently, but at least annually. Okay, this is what you've done last year. This is what we're going to do this year. Here's where you are in the career. Where do you see yourself in 12 months and 24 months? Now let's figure out a path to get you there. This is what you need to do to get to this spot. If you want to be, the senior incident response manager, you want to be the on the ground person with customers, you want to move into management, let's find out, here's where you are, here's where you want to go, here's the gap. These are the 5 things you need to do to get there.
Yep. All right. And I think in respect of the time, let's talk about the retention or exit or termination. Before we jump on that, Michael, there's a question in Q&A here. What are your thoughts about hiring managers who are building the empire?
Well, that always is based on your point of view. If you're an employee in the hiring manager's fiefdom, you may like it. You may like being part of the corral of individuals. Maybe you're the group that's flying the pirate flag in the company, and you're renegades, and so it may be kind of okay. If you are another manager who actually has to work with this particular individual or particular management team that has this fiefdom, that could be a little bit of, it could be threatening. It could be difficult. I've worked in environments where I've had these hiring managers with these, form these fiefdoms, and they're like, you can't talk to my people, and my people can't leave. They're in the fortress, so you can't have anyone, but this person wants to move to my team, can't go. So that's a little bit, you've got to play the politics on that you have to be a little bit more politically savvy. Do you have someone that can run intermediary, who can get some insight knowledge of what's going on? Is there someone who's above you in the company that you can work with to try to figure out how you can make this situation better? So I mean, that one, you do not solve the fiefdom situation on your own. You need to have some gamesmanship to really pull that off.
Yeah, you're never really going to be in an organization without politics, because at the end of the day, what I've come to, the conclusion I've come to is that politics is about the allocation of resources. All right. And resources are always scarce, right? It's the nature of our work environments. I think it's the nature of living on planet Earth, but so people are always going to be contending with each other for resources, and I just think that it's a bit naive to think that you're not going to have to deal with that. And at the same time, I'll tell you that it can be extremely distasteful at times. But what I also tell new supervisors is I say, being a supervisor is kind of like hanging out in a candy store. Because you have a lot of power, you have perks, you have privileges, right? But every now and then, someone's going to serve you a big bowl of steaming broccoli, and you're going to have to eat it, because that's
good.
Because that's part of, well, pick the vegetable you like the least, but you know what I mean? Like, you can eat candy all day long, but sometimes you got to eat those vegetables, right? Because that is just the nature of that job. Michael talked earlier about, when somebody's not performing, what do you do? Well, that's another example of eating your vegetables, right? Because those are awful conversations to have. You have to do a lot of prep work, and you're trying to motivate somebody to get better, not necessarily to get rid of them. But I can tell you, there's a lot of managers out there who will not eat their vegetables, and I just don't think they understand just how toxic that is to their teams when they won't do that hard work.
Yep, absolutely. Let's wrap up with this question. Retention. First of all, as a manager, how often do you think that it's wise for us to think about that people are going to leave? It's inevitable. Second, when it comes to retention, what comes to mind? Like, why do I retain this person? Maybe this person was not good to me, good for a company. Do I retain? Do I fight for that person? What are the motivations for me as a manager to retain that person for company, or to understand that this is not the right fit for them and I shouldn't actually fight for it, even though I want it?
Kip, why don't you start with that one?
Oh yeah, sure. Happy to do it. Listen, I think I've already given you kind of a sneak peek, right, into how I try to think about team members departing, right? I try to see it as a graduation for them, right? Because they're leaving. And here's, I don't know if any of you have had the experience of going to a supervisor and saying, it's time for me to go, and to have them counter offer to you, right? Essentially beg you not to go by handing you money. I think it's a mistake to do that, because this person has already said that they need to go, and you're trying to manipulate them into staying. So I tend to take that view of it. Now, if they want to go because something's not right and it's an easy fix, right? You could fix it. Like, let's say they're like, boy, I just can't stand this one task that you've given me. I just can't do it anymore. Maybe you didn't realize what a dissatisfier that was, and you can remove that from their responsibilities, and then everything's good again. Oh, I don't have a problem with that. But if somebody just is not getting the challenges that they need anymore, if they're really committed to growth and they're just not getting those challenges and you can't give them the challenges that they need, well, I really think you have to let them go, and you have to do your best to celebrate the fact that they've recognized that and that they're ready for new challenges. Because here's one thing that the handbook talks about is if you're going to take a talent approach to building your teams, as opposed to a butts in seats approach, hey, if you just want to put a butt in a seat, who cares, right? Who cares what kind of a person they are? Just get them in there and make them work. But if you're going to take a talent approach to it, well, then you have to start thinking about your reputation. If you give a departing person a bad time as they're departing, they're going to tell everybody what a jerk you are. And how do you think that's going to affect the next time you post for a job? So there's my soapbox on the topic. Michael?
Yeah, I think to the point about money, I think money is a short-term incentive. It makes people happy in the short term, but 3 months down the road, they forget about it. I mean, think about just think about your last raise. You know, how long did that last before you were like, what raise? I can't even remember it. But in terms of retention, I think about my employees leaving all the freaking time. In fact, that's why it's so important to have those career conversations. And I even do quarterly performance reviews with people so I can gauge really every 90 days, is that person doing okay? Are they unhappy? Are they still achieving whatever goals that they wanted to achieve for that year? Or are they still on track to hitting whatever that next milestone in their career is? So I like to keep my finger on the pulse of everyone to such a degree that I know who's leaving, who's going to leave soon, who do I want to keep, you know, who's going to go. Now, in terms of retention, you know, again, to Kip's point on celebrating those who leave, I think it's really a great thing. No individual that works for you is not replaceable. Everyone is replaceable. And, you know, sure, it may be painful, especially when the unicorn cybersecurity guru technician decides to leave for the jet ski that he or she just got offered at the new job.
Another reason not to hire unicorns.
Exactly. But 90 days after that, people are going to be going, who was that? Because the team will have figured out a way through the process, or you would have hired someone to kind of help fill maybe not the full gamut of the void, but part of the void. So really retaining people is all about keeping them to whatever point they are in their careers so they meet their full potential.
Yep.
And so you can actually fill the hole. So when they leave, you've triangulated your replacement strategy on their departure.
Right. When somebody leaves your team, if you don't already have 2 or 3 names in your head about who you want to approach,
exactly,
you haven't been doing your job of building your talent pipeline.
Right.
Perfect. I know we are way over our time. I'll depart with this question. Kip, you talk about the cybersecurity handbook, and I think you're going to teach that handbook or about that handbook. Tell us about that, and we'll wrap up with that.
I appreciate that, Victor. So I'm going to teach about. I'm going to teach a course. It's called How to Build a Cybersecurity Team That Gets Stuff Done. It's going to be based on the handbook. It's not going to be a direct reading of the handbook. I'm going to do that for the Wild West Hacking Fest organization. And I'm going to do that in San Diego at the Way West conference. That's May 3rd and 4th. And I'm also going to do it online. And that's going to be the week of March 8th through the 11th, or, you know, the days March 8th through the 11th. So watch for these courses to go up on the Wild West Hacking Fest website, and I hope you'll take the course.
Thank you very much, Kip. Michael, this was very insightful. Again, we talk about this, and yet every time we talk about it, I learn something new from you. Thank you very much, and thank you all the audience for joining today.